The morning sun cast long shadows across the Luna Station Command Center as Admiral Drefku studied the holographic display floating before him. The galaxy stretched out in 3 dimensions, a spiral of stars marked by colors that told the story of war. Red markers showed hegemony territory, blue indicated coalition space, and there in the middle sat Earth. Marked in pure white, neutral, safe, or so they hoped, Kim touched the control panel and zoomed in on the Sol system. 3 years had passed since the Great Sixum War began, and Earth had managed to stay out of it. The decision had not been easy. Both sides had visited Earth with their ambassadors, their threats, and their promises. The hegemony offered advanced weapons, technology, and protection from their enemies. The coalition promised trade routes and shared knowledge. Earth had said no to both. "Admiral, the morning briefing is ready," said Lieutenant Park, who stood at attention near the door. Kim nodded and walked toward the briefing room. On the way, he passed the observation deck where he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue marble, beautiful, peaceful, worth protecting in the briefing room. Ambassador Park So-young was already speaking to the assembled officers. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a voice that carried authority. Today she wore the standard Earth diplomatic uniform, navy blue with the Earth symbol on the collar. "The situation remains stable," she said, pointing to the star map on the wall. "Both sides continue to respect our neutrality. Yesterday, we received another request from the hegemony to use our space stations for refueling. We declined, as always. The coalition asked for permission to build a supply depot on Mars. We said no to them as well." Commander Lee Dong-hain raised his hand. "What about the refugee situation? My ship picked up another group of coalition civilians last week. They were fleeing a hegemony attack on their home world." Park So-young nodded. "The refugee camps are at capacity, but we are managing. These beings came to us for help, and we will not turn them away. That is what neutrality means. We help everyone, we fight no one." Lee Dong-hain commanded the merchant vessel Harmony, one of the largest civilian ships in the Earth fleet. His crew included humans and aliens working together. They traded with both sides of the war, carrying food, medicine, and supplies to worlds that needed them. The Harmony had become a symbol of hope in the galaxy. After the briefing, Kim walked to his private office. On his desk lay reports from across human space. The defense of Earth required constant vigilance. General Choi Manasio had been working for months to improve their military readiness, not for attack, but for defense. They studied every battle report, every new weapon, every tactic used by both sides. Kim opened the file marked current threats. The hegemony had been growing more aggressive lately. Their ships had been seen closer to Earth's space than usual. Intelligence reports suggested they were frustrated by Earth's refusal to pick a side. The coalition was worried too. They needed allies, and Earth's strategic position made it valuable. Down in the research labs, Dr. Yoon Ha-jin was studying samples from the various alien species that had sought refuge on Earth. Her work was important for medical reasons. It also revealed something interesting about the war. The two sides were not just fighting over territory or resources. They were fighting because they thought differently about everything. The hegemony believed in strength through unity. Everyone should follow the same rules, think the same way, and serve the same purpose. They saw the coalition as weak and divided. The coalition believed in freedom and choice. They thought the hegemony was cruel and controlling. Either side could understand the other. Humans were different from both groups. They could work together when needed, but they also valued individual freedom. They could be peaceful traders one day and fierce warriors the next. This flexibility confused both sides of the war. Captain Namjoon was visiting her family in Seoul when she received the message. All military personnel were to report to their stations immediately. Something was happening. She kissed her parents goodbye and took the transport to the spaceport. Her ship, the Defender, was a patrol vessel that guarded the outer edges of Earth space. As she traveled through space toward her ship, she thought about the war. 3 years of fighting had destroyed countless worlds. Billions of beings had died. Entire species had been wiped out. And for what? Neither side seemed closer to victory. They just kept fighting because they had forgotten how to stop. On Luna, Station Lieutenant Colonel Park Taezong was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. His job was to listen to both sides and report any threats to Earth. Today, the messages were different. There was more anger in the hegemony transmissions, more desperation in the coalition signals. The hegemony had been losing ground lately. 3 major battles had gone badly for them. Their leaders were under pressure to show strength. The coalition was pushing forward, trying to end the war quickly. Both sides were getting desperate, and desperate people made dangerous choices. In the United Nations building in New York, President Kong Soo-bin was meeting with world leaders. The topic was always the same. How long could Earth remain neutral? Some countries wanted to join the coalition. Others thought the hegemony would win and wanted to be on the winning side. A few suggested that Earth should try to end the war. By bringing both sides together for peace talks, President Kang listened to all of them, but her position remained clear. Earth would stay neutral as long as possible. It would help refugees, trade with both sides, and defend themselves if attacked. But they would not choose sides in someone else's war. Major Han the Cell was working late in the Refugee Coordination Center. The latest group of arrivals included families from 6 different species. They had lost everything when their worlds were destroyed. Now they looked to Earth for safety and hope. Many of them had never seen a human before, but they quickly learned that humans would help anyone in need. The children were the hardest to watch. They had seen things no child should see. War had taken their homes, their friends, sometimes their parents. But here on Earth, they could play again. They could go to school with human children and learn that not everyone in the galaxy was fighting. As the day ended, Admiral Kim stood on the observation deck again. The stars looked peaceful from here, but he knew that somewhere out there, ships were fighting and dying. Worlds were burning. Families were being torn apart. Earth sat in the middle of it all, trying to be a light in the darkness. He thought about the choice they had made 3 years ago. Neutrality was not easy. It meant saying no to powerful allies. It meant being seen as weak by some and cowardly by others. But it also meant that Earth remained a place where peace was possible, where different species could work together. It's where. War was not the only answer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Both sides would keep asking Earth to join them. The pressure would grow stronger. But tonight, at least, Earth was still neutral, still free, still human. Commander Song Kung-ho was drinking his morning coffee when the alarms started screaming. His patrol ship, the Watchman, was conducting routine sweeps near the asteroid belt when every sensor on his ship lit up at once. Massive energy signatures were appearing out of nowhere right at the edge of Earth's space. "Commander, we have 12 contacts," his sensor officer reported, her voice tight with fear. "They are big, sir, really big." Song set down his coffee cup and moved to the command chair. On the main screen, he could see them now. 12 hegemony dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small city, hanging in space like dark metal mountains. They had appeared without warning, using some kind of stealth, technology that Earth had never seen before. "How did they get past our early warning systems?" Song asked, but he already knew the answer. The hegemony had been studying coalition technology for years. They had learned to copy their stealth systems and use them for surprise attacks. Lee Dreadnought was already moving toward Earth. Song opened a communication channel to Luna Station. "This is Watchman to command. We have hostile contacts entering Earth space. Request immediate backup." But before anyone could respond, the hegemony ships opened fire. Captain Namjoon was at her childhood home in Seoul. Having lunch with her parents, when the sky began to burn, she was telling them about her latest patrol mission when bright lights appeared overhead. At first, she thought they were shooting stars. Then the ground began to shake. The first orbital bombardment struck the refugee camp outside the city. Nam watched in horror as a beam of pure energy carved through the buildings where thousands of alien families had found safety. The camp where children had been playing just minutes before was now a smoking crater. "Get to the basement," she shouted to her parents as more energy beams struck the city. The hegemony was not targeting military bases or government buildings. They were attacking schools, hospitals, and refugee centers. Places where innocent people lived and worked. Nam grabbed her emergency communicator and tried to contact her ship. The signal was weak, but she could hear her crew calling for orders. "This is Captain Nam," she said. "All hands to battle stations. We are at war." Her mother grabbed her arm. "Where are you going?" "To stop them," Nam said, kissing her mother's cheek. "Take care of Dad. I will come back." She ran through the burning streets toward the spaceport.
Around her.
People were screaming and running for shelter. Some were human, but many were the aliens who had come to Earth seeking peace. Now they were dying because they had trusted humanity to protect them. Lieutenant Colonel Park Tae-zoong was on Luna Station when the attack began. From his position on the moon, he could see Earth being bombarded from orbit. The beautiful blue world was being scarred by lines of fire as the hegemony ships unleashed their weapons. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the hegemony fleet," his communications officer reported. "Put it on speaker," Park ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical. "People of Earth, you have harbored our enemies and refused our friendship. Your neutrality ends now. You have 72 hours to surrender your government and join the hegemony. If you refuse, your world will be destroyed." Park stared at the screen, showing Earth under attack. The message was clear. The hegemony had decided that neutrality was no longer acceptable. Earth would join them or be wiped out completely. President Kong Soo-ben was in the underground command center beneath the United Nations building when the emergency session began. World leaders appeared on screens from bunkers and secure locations across the globe. The vote they were about to take would change everything. "Hegemony has given us an ultimatum," President Kang announced. "They want us to surrender in 72 hours or face total destruction. We must decide now. Do we submit to their demands or do we fight?" The discussion was brief but intense. Some leaders argued for surrender, saying that Earth could not win against such a powerful enemy. Others demanded immediate retaliation. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. "Earth will not surrender," President Kang declared. "Our neutrality is officially ended. We are now at war with the hegemony." For the first time in human history, the entire planet was mobilizing for total war. Every nation, every military force, every resource would be focused on one goal: survival, Major Han. The cell was in the Refugee Coordination Center when the first evacuations began. Thousands of alien civilians who had sought safety on Earth were now being moved to secure underground facilities. Many of them were crying, not from fear, but from anger. "We want to fight," said an elderly coalition refugee named Vex. His species looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. "Your people protected us. Now let us protect you." Han looked around the room at the faces of beings from dozens of different worlds. They had come to Earth as refugees, but they were asking to stay as soldiers. The hegemony had not anticipated this. They thought destroying the refugee camps would make Earth surrender faster. Instead, it had created an army of volunteers ready to die for their adopted home. "We will need every fighter we can get," Han told them. "If you are willing to serve, Earth will welcome your help." Admiral Kim Jae-woo stood in the Luna Station Command Center watching the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was holding position in Earth's orbit, waiting for the surrender that would never come. In 72 hours, the real war would begin, but Earth was not sitting idle. Across the planet, factories were already converting from civilian production to military manufacturing. Spacecraft were being armed and armored. Weapons that had been stored for decades were being brought out and tested. The hegemony had made a critical mistake. They had assumed that Earth's neutrality meant weakness. They thought that attacking civilians would break human spirit. They were wrong. Kim opened a communication channel to all Earth forces. "This is Admiral Kim to all units. The enemy has shown us their true nature. They target the innocent and threaten the helpless. They have awakened something in humanity that they do not understand. We are no longer neutral. We are no longer peaceful. We are at war." Commander Lee Dong-haen was loading his ship with supplies when the message came through. The Harmony, which had been a merchant vessel carrying food and medicine, was now being converted into a warship. His crew worked with desperate efficiency, knowing that time was running out. "Captain," his first officer said, "we have volunteers from the refugee camps asking to join the crew. They say they know hegemony ship designs and weapon systems." Lee nodded. "Take them all. We need every advantage we can get." As the sun set over Earth, the planet was transforming. The peaceful world that had remained neutral for 3 years was becoming a fortress. Humanity had chosen to fight, and they would use every resource, every ally, and every advantage they could find. The hegemony had wanted to end Earth's neutrality. They had succeeded. But they had also created an enemy unlike any they had faced before, an enemy that would fight not just for territory or ideology, but for the right to exist, an enemy that would show the galaxy what humans could do when they were truly angry. The 72-hour countdown had begun. When it ended, the galaxy would never be the same. The 72 hours passed like a nightmare that would not end. When the deadline arrived, Earth was ready. Colonel Bayman J. stood in the converted automobile factory in Detroit, watching robots that had once assembled cars, now building weapons of war. The transformation was incredible. In just 3 days, humanity had turned their entire industrial capacity toward one goal: fighting back. "Production is ahead of schedule," reported the factory supervisor. "We will have the first batch of plasma cannons ready for shipment tonight." Bay nodded, but his mind was on the bigger picture. Across Earth, similar factories were working around the clock. The hegemony had expected a quick surrender or a desperate last stand. They had not expected this. They had not expected humanity to be ready for total war. Captain Osu Jin was preparing for humanity's first strike when the orders came through. Her fleet consisted of 12 civilian vessels that had been hastily converted to warships. Cargo ships now carried missile launchers. Passenger liners had been fitted with energy shields. Even small mining vessels had been armed with improvised weapons. "Remember," she told her captains over the communication channel, "we are not trying to win a fair fight or trying to survive. Use every advantage you can find." The hegemony patrol that encountered O's fleet near Jupiter was expecting an easy victory. They had faced coalition forces many times before. Those enemies fought with honor, following established tactics and rules of engagement. Humans, they discovered, fought very differently. O's ships, scattered as soon as the battle began, using the asteroid belt as cover. They did not group together for a traditional ship-to-ship battle. Instead, they hunted like wolves, appearing from behind rocks and debris, striking fast, disappearing again. The hegemony commander tried to follow standard battle procedures, but the humans would not cooperate. They used the gravity of Jupiter's moons to slingshot their ships at incredible speeds. They hid in the shadows of asteroids and attacked from unexpected angles. When one human ship was damaged, the others would surround it and carry it to safety. Target their command ship, O ordered. Her vessel, the converted passenger liner New Hope, had been fitted with a massive railgun taken from a decommissioned orbital defense platform. It was not designed for ship-to-ship combat, but humans had a talent for using things in ways they were not intended. The railgun fired. The hegemony command ship exploded in a brilliant flash. The other enemy vessels, suddenly without leadership, began to retreat. O's fleet had won humanity's first space battle, and they had done it with converted civilian ships and improvised weapons. Commander Yang Haiyan-Wu was in charge of psychological warfare, a concept that was new to galactic combat. Other species used propaganda and threats to demoralize their enemies. Humans used something much more powerful: emotion. Yang's team had recorded the names and faces of every person killed in the initial attack on Earth. They had collected the final messages that many victims had sent to their families. They had documented the destruction of schools, hospitals, and refugee camps. Now they were broadcasting all of this directly to hegemony communication channels. The effect was immediate and devastating. Hegemony soldiers who had been told they were fighting dangerous terrorists suddenly saw the faces of children and elderly beings who had been killed. They heard the voices of mothers calling for their babies. They saw the destruction of places where healing and learning had taken place. "Sir, we are receiving reports of widespread desertion in the hegemony," Fleet Yang's assistant reported. "Many of their soldiers are refusing to fight." Yang nodded grimly. "Good. Let them see what they have done. Let them understand that they are not fighting monsters. They are fighting people who just wanted to live in peace." The hegemony commanders tried to block the human broadcasts, but it was too late. The damage was done. For the first time in the war, hegemony soldiers were questioning their orders. Some were even switching sides. Engineer Kim Dae-yoon was working in the research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains when she made the breakthrough that would change everything. Human scientists had been studying alien faster-than-light technology for years, but they had never been able to improve on it. Now, with the pressure of war driving them, they had found a way. "The alien drives require rare materials that are hard to find," Kim explained to the assembled team. "But what if we do not need the same materials? What if we can build something that works differently but achieves the same result?" Was elegantly simple. Instead of trying to copy alien technology exactly, humans would build drives that used common materials but were designed to be easily modified and repaired. They would not be as powerful as the alien versions, but they could be built faster and in greater numbers. "We can have a prototype ready for testing in 2 weeks," Kim announced. "If it works, we can begin mass production immediately." The human approach to technology reflected their approach to war. They did not try to match their enemy's strengths directly. Instead, they found ways to turn their own advantages into. WEAPONS, Dr. Lim Song-wook, was studying captured hegemony equipment when he made a discovery that explained why humans were so effective in combat. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also inflexible. It was designed to work in specific ways and could not be easily modified. Human technology, by contrast, was designed to be adaptable. A human engineer could take apart a weapon and rebuild it for a different purpose. A human pilot could modify their ship's systems during battle. A human soldier could use any available tool as a weapon. "The aliens are smarter than us," Lim explained to his research team. "Their technology is more advanced than ours. But they think in patterns. They follow rules. They think in possibilities." This difference was becoming apparent in every battle. Hegemony forces would execute their battle plans perfectly, but when those plans failed, they struggled to adapt. Human forces, on the other hand, seemed to get more creative and dangerous as battles progressed. Lieutenant Park Ha-young was leading the first human boarding party when she discovered another advantage that humans possessed. Her team had successfully infiltrated a hegemony supply ship, and they were fighting through the corridors toward the bridge. The hegemony soldiers were better armed and better trained, but they were also confused by human tactics. When cornered, other species would either surrender or fight to the death in predictable ways. Humans did neither. They became more dangerous and unpredictable. Park's team used improvised weapons and unconventional tactics. They turned the ship's own systems against the defenders. They used psychological warfare, making sounds and creating distractions that confused the enemy. They fought like they were defending their homes, because in a way, they were. "Humans are not stronger than us," one captured hegemony soldier told his interrogators. "They are not smarter than us, but they are different. They think different. They fight different. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like parents protecting their children." Admiral Kim Jae-woo was studying the battle reports when he realized what was happening. The hegemony had expected to face another military force like the coalition. Instead, they had awakened something primal in humanity. They had not just attacked Earth's military, they had attacked Earth's children, its civilians, its guests. "They do not understand us," Kim told his staff. "They think we are just another species with ships and weapons. They do not realize that they have declared war on a planet full of beings who will do anything to protect their families." The reports from across human space told the same story. Wherever humans fought, they won. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through adaptability and determination. They used every advantage they could find, and they never gave up. As the first month of the war ended, the galaxy began to take notice. The hegemony, which had seemed unstoppable, was being challenged by a species that had been neutral just weeks before. The coalition, which had been losing ground for months, suddenly had new allies who brought fresh ideas and unexpected tactics. But the real change was happening in the minds of beings across the galaxy. They were seeing that there was another way to fight, another way to think, another way to live. The humans had shown them that neutrality was not weakness, that peace was worth fighting for. Earth had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the first attack on Earth, Fleet Admiral Jing Hairen stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance, watching the largest human fleet ever assembled prepare for battle. 200 ships of all sizes and types stretched out in formation before her. Some were purpose-built warships, others were converted civilian vessels, and a few were completely new designs that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. "Admiral, all ships report ready for jump," her communications officer announced. Zheng nodded, looking at the tactical display. The hegemony had expected a quick victory over Earth, but 6 months later, they were fighting a war unlike anything they had experienced. Human tactics changed every day, incorporating lessons learned from each battle. Every defeat taught them something new, and every victory showed them new possibilities. "Begin the jump sequence," Zheng ordered. "Target the hegemony supply depot at Kepler 442. Let us show them what we have learned." The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, leaving only empty space behind. The hegemony would not know they were coming until it was too late. Captain Shin Wusung was not with the fleet. He was sitting in a control room deep beneath the surface of Mars, piloting a ship that was 3 star systems away. The concept of ghost fleets had been his idea, and it was driving the hegemony forces to distraction. "Ghost 7, you have 3 enemy fighters approaching from your port side," Shin reported to the unmanned ship under his control. The ship responded instantly, rolling away from the attack and firing its weapons. From the hegemony's perspective, they were fighting a ship with no crew, no life signs, and no fear. The human pilot was safe on Mars, controlling the vessel through quantum communication links. "This is wrong," one captured hegemony pilot had told his interrogators. "How can you fight without honor? How can you kill without risk?" The humans had tried to explain that honor did not feed families or protect children. Risk was something to be minimized, not embraced. But the hegemony culture was built on personal combat and individual glory. They could not understand an enemy that refused to play by their rules. Shin's ghost ships were becoming legendary throughout the galaxy. They appeared without warning, fought with perfect coordination, and disappeared when the battle was won. The hegemony had no effective counter for them, because they could not understand the mentality that created them. Lieutenant Commander Park Hyung was preparing for another boarding action when the call came through. Her team had become specialists in capturing enemy vessels, and they were very good at it. But this mission was different. They were not just capturing a ship, they were capturing a hegemony admiral. Remember, Park told her team as they prepared to board the enemy command vessel, "We need him alive. Is information that could end this war faster." The boarding action was fierce but brief. The hegemony crew fought with the desperation of beings who knew they were losing. But Park's team fought with the precision of soldiers who had learned to win through teamwork and innovation. When they reached the bridge, the hegemony admiral was waiting for them. He was a tall, imposing figure with scaled skin and yellow eyes. His species had conquered dozens of worlds, and they were not accustomed to defeat. "You fight without honor," the admiral said as Park's team secured the bridge. "You use tricks and deception. You are not warriors." Park removed her helmet and looked at the alien commander. "You are right. We are not warriors. We are parents, and teachers and builders. We are farmers and doctors and engineers. But you attacked our children. You destroyed our homes. You forced us to become something we never wanted to be." The admiral stared at her, trying to understand.
Ow.
"You fight so well." Because Park said simply, "We are fighting for something worth dying for, and that makes us stronger than any warrior." The captured admiral would provide intelligence that would change the course of the war. But more importantly, he would carry back to his people a message about what they were really fighting, Ambassador. Kim the One was in the Coalition capital when the offer of alliance came through. The Coalition had been fighting the hegemony for years without success, but now they wanted to join forces with the humans, who had been neutral just months before. "We offer you full membership in the Coalition," the Coalition leader said. "Your ships, your soldiers, your technology, we will share everything." Kim listened carefully to the offer. It was generous, but it was also flawed. The Coalition wanted Earth to be a junior partner, following their strategies and their command structure. They had not learned the lesson that the hegemony was slowly discovering. Humans did not follow other people's rules. "We'll join your alliance," Kim said finally. "But as equal partners, not as subordinates. We will share our technology and our tactics, but we will not surrender our independence." The Coalition leaders looked uncomfortable. They had expected Earth to be grateful for their acceptance. They had not expected demands for equality. "You have been fighting this war for years," Kim continued, "and you have been losing. We have been fighting for 6 months, and we are winning. Perhaps it is time to try our way." The negotiation took weeks, but eventually the Coalition agreed to the terms. Earth would join the alliance as an equal partner, bringing their ships, their soldiers, and their revolutionary approach to warfare. Scientist Li Juhi was working on the quantum communication project when she achieved the breakthrough that would change everything. The ability to communicate instantly across vast distances had been theoretical for decades. But the pressure of war had driven human innovation to new heights. "We can coordinate fleet movements across multiple star systems simultaneously," Li explained to the assembled military leaders. "Our ships can operate as a single force, even when they are separated by hundreds of light years." The implications were staggering. While the hegemony and Coalition forces had to rely on slower communication methods, human fleets could coordinate their actions in real time. They could strike multiple targets simultaneously, respond to threats instantly, and adapt their strategies. As battles developed, "Test it," Admiral Kim ordered. "If it works, we can begin installing the system on all our ships immediately." The test was conducted using 2 fleets on opposite sides of the galaxy. The coordination was perfect. Orders given on Earth were received instantly on ships near the galactic core. Battle plans could be adjusted in real time based on conditions. In multiple star systems, the hegemony had superior technology and more ships. But they were fighting an enemy that could think and act as one unified force across the entire galaxy. Captain Lee Minho was commanding the defense of a coalition. Mining World, when he first saw the new human tactic in action, his small fleet was vastly outnumbered by the attacking hegemony forces, but help was on the way from across the galaxy. "All ships, this is Admiral Zheng," came the voice over the quantum communication system. "We are coordinating a simultaneous strike on 17 hegemony positions. Your battle is part of a larger offensive. Fight well and know that you are not alone." Lee watched as his tactical display showed the positions of human and coalition forces throughout the galaxy. Battle was connected. Every victory or defeat affected the larger war. The humans had turned the entire galaxy into a single battlefield. The hegemony forces attacking Lee's position fought well, but they were part of a fleet that was being attacked simultaneously in dozens of locations. They could not concentrate their forces because they were under pressure everywhere at once. "Sir, the hegemony fleet is withdrawing," Lee's tactical officer reported. "They are receiving calls for help from their other positions." Lee smiled. The humans had learned something that the galaxy had forgotten. Wars were not won by individual battles, but by coordinated campaigns. They were fighting not just for their own survival, but for the freedom of every being in the galaxy. Dr. Park Sung Ho was analyzing the psychological effects of the war when he noticed something interesting. The longer the conflict continued, the more the human forces were changing. They were becoming more confident, more creative, and more effective, but they were also becoming more determined to end the war quickly. "War is not natural for humans," Park explained to his research team. "We are social beings who prefer cooperation to conflict. But when we are forced to fight, we fight to win as quickly as possible so we can return to peace." From both the hegemony and the coalition, the hegemony fought for conquest and glory. Coalition fought for survival and freedom. Humans fought to end the fighting. They wanted to return to building, creating, and exploring. That is why we are winning, Park concluded. We are not fighting for ideology or territory. We are fighting to go home. As the first year of the war ended, the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The hegemony, which had seemed unstoppable, was being pushed back on multiple fronts. The coalition, which had been losing ground for years, was suddenly advancing. And at the center of it all were the humans who had gone. From neutral observers to galactic game-changers in just 12 months. But the cost had been terrible. Captain Yu and his entire infiltration team were dead. Colonel On had lost half her ground forces. Admiral Ging's fleet was reduced to barely 60 ships from the 200 that had begun the assault. Ships, begin withdrawal, Zhang ordered. We have accomplished our mission. It is time to go home. The surviving human ships began their retreat from the hegemony home system. They had won the most important battle of the war, but they were too damaged to continue fighting. The hegemony fleet, shocked by the destruction of their ultimate weapon, did not pursue, as the human fleet jumped to faster than light speed. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked back at the system they were leaving. Thousands of human soldiers and spacers had died in that battle, but their sacrifice had saved not just Earth, but the entire galaxy from a weapon too terrible to exist. Set course for Earth, she ordered. We are going home. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. During that time, news of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The humans had done what no one thought possible. They had struck at the heart of the hegemony and destroyed their most powerful weapon. More importantly, it had shown that the hegemony was not invincible. For the first time in years, coalition forces began to advance on multiple fronts. Neutral worlds that had been afraid to choose sides began to declare their support for the alliance. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting decisively. When Admiral Gang's fleet reached Earth orbit, they found a world transformed. The planet that had been neutral just 1 year before was now the center of a galactic alliance. Ships from dozens of species filled the space around Earth, all united in their determination to end the hegemony's reign of terror. Welcome home, Admiral, came the voice of Admiral Kim over the communication system. You have done something that will be remembered for 1,000 years. Zhang looked down at Earth, seeing the blue marble that had been her home and her inspiration. Throughout the war, the planet was scarred by the initial hegemony attack, but it was still beautiful, still worth fighting for, still worth dying for. Thank you, sir, she replied. But the war is not over yet. Hegemony still has fleets throughout the galaxy. They will not surrender easily. Kim nodded. That is true. But they no longer have their ultimate weapon, and they no longer have the initiative. The galaxy has seen what humans can do when they are truly committed to something. That changes everything. As the damaged fleet entered Earth orbit, the crews could see the lights of the cities below. Those lights represented billions of lives that had been saved by their sacrifice. They represented children who would grow up free, families who would remain together, and a future that was still possible. The battle for the hegemony home system had been won. But the war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. The humans had shown that even the most powerful enemy could be defeated if people were willing to fight for what they believed in. Now they would have to prove that they could build something better to replace what they had destroyed. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and humanity would face its greatest challenge yet, not just defeating their enemies, but creating a peace that would last for generations to come. 1 year after the destruction of the stellar collapse device, Ambassador Li Minyoung stood before the newly formed Galactic Council. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds, species that had been enemies just months before now working together to build a new future. The war is over, Li announced to the assembled delegates. The hegemony has surrendered unconditionally. Their military forces have been disbanded, and their leaders have agreed to stand trial for their crimes against sentient beings. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Species that had been fighting for years were finally free to return to their homes, to rebuild their worlds, and to raise their children in peace. But Li knew that the real work was just beginning. Now we must prove that we can build something better than what we destroyed, she continued. We must show that different species can work together, that conflict is not inevitable, and that the galaxy can be a place of cooperation instead of conquest. The new Galactic Council was unlike anything that had existed before. Instead of being dominated by the most powerful species, it gave equal voice to all worlds, regardless of their size or strength. The humans had insisted on this structure, remembering their own experience as a neutral world that had been ignored by the great powers. Captain Kim Woojin was preparing for humanity's first major exploration mission since the war ended. His ship, the Unity, was crewed by beings from 12 different species, all working together to explore the unknown regions of the galaxy. Our mission is simple, Kim told his diverse crew. We are going to look for new worlds, new life, and new possibilities. We are going to show the galaxy that exploration is better than conquest, that discovery is better than destruction. The crew included former enemies who had learned to work together during the war. Hegemony scientists worked alongside coalition engineers. Refugee civilians served as cultural specialists. Human officers provided leadership and coordination. Captain, we are approaching the target system, reported his navigation officer, a tall blue-skinned being named Vex, who had been a refugee on Earth during the war. Initial scans show 3 potentially habitable worlds. Kim smiled as he looked at the display. This was what the future looked like. Beings from different worlds working together to expand the boundaries of known space. They were explorers, not conquerors. They were builders, not destroyers. General Seo Kung-Soo was overseeing the dismantling of the hegemony's military infrastructure when he received an unexpected visitor. The former hegemony admiral, who had been captured by Lieutenant Commander Park Hyung, wanted to speak with him. I have come to thank you, the alien said, his scaled face showing an expression that SEO had learned to recognize as gratitude. My species has been at war for so long that we had forgotten what peace looked like. Your people have shown us another way. Seo nodded thoughtfully. The hardest part of any war is not winning it, but learning to live without it. Your people are not evil. They were just trapped in a system that made war seem like the only option. Former Admiral was now working with the rehabilitation program that the humans had established. Instead of seeking revenge against their former enemies, humanity had insisted on education and integration. Former hegemony soldiers were being retrained as peacekeepers, teachers, and explorers. We have a saying on Earth, Seo continued. Best way to defeat an enemy is to make them your friend. We are not interested in punishing your people. We want to help them find a better way to live. Dr. Choi the Jin was in her laboratory, studying the genetic samples that had been collected from hundreds of species during the war. Her research had revealed something remarkable about the diversity of life in the galaxy, and about humanity's place in it. We are not the smartest species, she explained to her research team. We're not the strongest, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. But we have something that seems to be rare in the galaxy, the ability to form strong bonds with other species. Her studies had shown that humans had an unusual capacity for empathy and cooperation. Where other species tended to trust only their own kind, humans could form emotional connections with beings that were completely different from them. This had made them natural leaders during the war, and it made them natural peacemakers afterward. Evolution prepared us for this moment, Choi concluded, not to conquer the galaxy, but to help it find unity and diversity. The implications of her research were being felt throughout the galaxy. The idea that different species could not only coexist but thrive together was revolutionary. It was changing how beings thought about themselves and their place in the universe. President Lim Dong-woo was preparing for the memorial service that would honor all those who had died in the war. The ceremony would be held on Earth, but it would be broadcast to every world in the galaxy. It was important that the lessons of the war not be forgotten. We gathered today to remember those who gave their lives so that we might live in peace, President Lim said as he stood before the massive memorial that had been built in Geneva. The names of every human who had died in the war were carved into black stone, along with the names of aliens who had fought alongside them. They did not die for conquest or glory, he continued. They died for the simple belief that different beings could live together in harmony. They died so that their children could grow up in a galaxy where war was not inevitable. The memorial service was attended by representatives from every species in the galaxy. Former enemies stood together, honoring the dead and pledging to build a better future. It was a moment that would be remembered for generations to come. Captain Num Juhon was visiting her parents in Seoul when she received the news that would change her life. The Galactic Council had approved humanity's proposal for a new kind of military force, a peacekeeping organization that would prevent conflicts before they could start. They want you to command it, her mother said, showing her the official communication. They want you to lead the first truly galactic military force. Nam looked at the message, feeling the weight of responsibility. The new force would include soldiers from dozens of species, all working together to maintain peace. It would be a challenge unlike anything the galaxy had attempted before. Will you accept? Her father asked. Nam thought about the war, about the friends she had lost, about the children she had seen in the refugee camps. She thought about the future that they were trying to build and the price that had been paid for the chance to build it. Yes, she said finally. Someone has to make sure this never happens again. The Galactic Peacekeeping Force would become one of the most important institutions in the new galaxy. It would prevent dozens of conflicts over the coming decades, and it would serve as a model for how different species could work together. As the second year of peace began, the galaxy was transforming in ways that no one had imagined. Trade routes that had been closed for years were reopening. Scientific collaboration was producing breakthrough discoveries. Cultural exchange was creating new forms of art and music. But the most important change was happening in the minds of beings throughout the galaxy. The war had shown them that conflict was not inevitable, that different species could work together, and that the future could be better than the past. Earth, which had begun the story as a neutral world, trying to avoid conflict, had become the center of a new galactic civilization. Not through conquest, but through example. Not through force, but through friendship. The humans had shown the galaxy that there was another way to live, another way to think, and another way to face the future. They had proven that even the greatest challenges could be overcome when beings worked together toward a common goal. The age of endless war was over. The age of exploration and cooperation had begun, and at the center of it all was a small blue planet whose people had refused to accept that conflict was inevitable, and who had fought not for conquest, but for the right to live in peace. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in centuries, that was a good thing.